The social commerce phenomenon is predicted to be a $1.2 trillion industry by 2025. So how can UK businesses, platforms and consumers make the most of the opportunity? And what are the challenges? I'm here with Accenture's Laura McCracken and Oliver Wright to find out. Welcome back to Tomorrow, Today. Laura, Oliver, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Oliver, let me start with you. Social commerce. Help us to define it.
So social commerce is where, if you're using a social media site, so think Instagram, think TikTok, is the ability to make a transaction end to end through the app itself. So you're not being sent out somewhere else, you keep it all within the app.
Yeah, so this is different to traditional e-commerce, Laura. Is it the same as online advertising within that, or different beasts?
It's different. Online advertising, you click on the ad and it redirects you to a website. Social commerce happens in the app.
Right. So let's just get a sort of big picture sense of it, Oliver, from you. We're not gazing into the future here. This is with us. Just give us a bit more of a flavour and then we'll draw in global examples.
Yeah, I mean, the size of this globally is enormous. Like, we're predicting that by the middle of the decade, it's going to be about 1.2 trillion in total. And just to give you a sense of how big it is in places like China, we had in Singles Day last year, Li Chachi, who's one of the big beauty advisors, beauty influencers, sold in an afternoon $1.7 billion worth of cosmetics.
And this is one individual?
One individual in a single afternoon.
So Laura, in the China example, and this individual known as, I think, sort of Mr. Makeup and so on, what is driving the huge take-up of social commerce in China?
Partly, it's because in China they almost leapfrogged us in the West, and that they went straight from marketplaces into social commerce, whereas we developed e-commerce websites. We had a very mature infrastructure in terms of payments. Yeah. They didn't. They went straight to mobile commerce and big super apps like WeChat and Alipay.
And so a super app, you've got a sort of a big front door, but inside that sits every other different service. Could be a taxi.
1 million apps. WeChat has 1 million light apps within the app.
In other words, you're only putting in your payment details the once, and then it's sort of, through into everything else. One
user sign-on, one payment method, but lots of experiences.
We don't really have that, do we?
No, we don't have it yet. But everyone's vying for it. There's a huge race right now for it to become a super app. Right. Everybody wants to be one, but no one's got it yet in the West.
Absolutely. So I'm getting the sense, I don't want to put words in your mouth here, Oliver, that the UK is lagging behind on social commerce. Is it, and if so, why?
Yeah, and just to build on what Laura's saying, it is lagging behind today, and that's partly because we've got consumers who are conditioned to buy through other mechanisms. Yeah. There's a big tradition of people going to stores to buy physically, people migrated towards e-commerce, and obviously that has created a level of path dependency. So as the infrastructure gets set up to do more social commerce-based tools, because a lot of this the technology hasn't necessarily been fully put in place, we do see that it will drift in that direction, but you've still got to wean consumers away from things that frankly are quite efficient today.
Just help me understand, though. There is a school of thought that would say no weaning is required. We're so at home on these social platforms, we should be taking to it like a duck to water. So I'm just pushing back on that theory, because it doesn't quite explain it. Is there anything else that's holding us back? Laura, feel free to come in.
Well, I would say we're lacking some of the capabilities, again, here. So if you look at we're all spending a lot of time on social media sites like TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, but there are not real clear payment mechanisms. Most people don't have the payment mechanisms coupled with that site.
Right. It's a good point. So, for example, on one of Meta's sites, Facebook, my understanding is even the marketplace function is still reliant on cash in hand.
Oftentimes. They're in the US, they've now got payments ready, but in the UK, we're not there yet.
And before we talk a bit more about what's in it for these platforms, just bring it to life with a few more examples of social commerce. What are we seeing? Just give us a bit of light.
Yeah, I mean, this is everything from people doing beauty advice to people giving guidance on cars, or basically it's a topic area which they have a lot of insight about. Yeah. That drives an audience. The audience then wants to actually be able to transact on the product, and then you provide the link and so on. So it is basically creating a high level of engagement, fundamentally building trust. Yeah. and then translating that trust into a transaction.
Right.
Now, it varies because you've obviously got large-scale influencers of the type we were talking about together, people like Li Chaoqi and Vaya, but you've also got a big burgeoning group of local and friends and family type influencers.
Yes.
And if you look at a lot of the growth in places like China, a huge amount of this has gotten from those people organizing to be able to create wealth creation or income vehicles for themselves.
Right, and Laura, you have worked and continue to work with some of the biggest platforms. What's in it for them?
Well, engagement, in short. So a lot of people talk about an additional revenue stream, and that's true, that's important. But engagement's the key thing. I mean, you want to get the customer who's engaged in this social experience to actually stay there and continue to complete the transactions and share with their friends and family and create creators and influencers without leaving the app.
So I'm trying to get my head into whether that places the platform as a new competitor to the retailer. Are they new partners? But just help me get into it.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a mix because I think that there will be this creates an opportunity for retail outlets also to have another mechanism to engage with consumers. But fundamentally, if you think about where the transaction takes place, clearly this is a revenue opportunity for a social media site to be able to drive and own that transaction end to end. And that will, to some degree, take some of the e-commerce growth overall that we're seeing away from traditional sites like Amazon and towards mechanisms like this. So we'll see a proliferation of the range of channels over the next few years.
And just briefly on that, because of course Amazon bought Twitch as one example, but to the untrained eye, Amazon doesn't look like a hugely social site, or am I seeing it from the wrong angle?
But they have launched a new influencer platform. So even those older e-commerce companies, the legacy platforms like Amazon, I hope none of my Amazon friends are listening, are developing social elements.
Right. So how then, Oliver, are the brands rising to this challenge? And maybe give a category example or something that you really think starts to epitomize where this is going.
Yeah, if we think about the range of products that you buy, you've got everything from tissue and toilet paper, which you're not going to spend a lot of time understanding, all the way through to things like what do you want to do, what sort of things might you give to your pet, or what you might use from a beauty perspective. So high engagement categories. Those that are towards the top end of that spectrum, you're seeing an increasingly large number of influencers who are setting up shop to give advice in those areas. Yeah. If you look at Instagram as an example, 1 in 20 Instagram posts is beauty related.
Interesting, right. That's huge. And then this actually forms part of the income for a very large number of people now, presumably. Can you give us any handle on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you just look in the US alone, we've now got about 2 million Americans who are making over $100,000 a year doing this. So this is no longer just a side hustle. For many people, it's now the main hustle.
Right. Well, I know what I'm going to be looking into after this story. So how about the creator economy? It's a phrase we hear bandied around. Interchangeable with influencers? We've been talking about those, or something a bit different?
It's different. Influencers kind of became popular on Instagram. Yeah. They used to say Instagrammable. Yeah. It's about having influence and having a large population of people following you. Creators are actually creating something that's unique and new. Yeah. And so I think it's being a creator, like you could be a yoga teacher or showing someone how to apply makeup.
Yeah, and I'm always interested in who's doing what. Who are the wallflowers? Who are the creators? Who are the sharers? Any sense of that in the UK or globally?
Well, globally, it is, I would say Gen Z is definitely taking this up. I think that right now, if you ask young people, they're going to say that their chosen profession when they grow up is to become a creator. And, there's a big difference in participation between the US and UK and the West. If you look in China, 30% of people are actually creators. Wow. So the level of participation is huge, and then success breeds success. And so more and more people try and take that up. Whereas here, we're in day one, it's 1%. In the UK.
And just to build on what Laura's saying, one of the things that COVID accelerated was the degree to which consumers around the world are looking at alternative ways of making a long-term living. Yeah. And we run these large global surveys, 18 different countries, 60,000 people. And one of the things that we found that really emerged through COVID was that there were about 40% of consumers who were saying, we want to actively consider a different way of making a living going forward than we have done historically. Yeah. And this obviously represents a very clear outlet for people to fulfill those sorts of passions and interests.
Yeah, in a way that more traditional retail will have required a huge commitment. This could be, the cliche would be the side hustle, but this is the side hustle on steroids. Practical tips then, Laura, what will you put out there, particularly for platforms? And by the way, do we now accept that the platforms will be a relatively small number of multi-billion-dollar, often US companies, or is there room for more?
I think there's room for more. And I think you're going to see more niche platforms evolving. You know, you might, right now you've got huge platforms, but you might see like a travel platform or an entertainment platform, a music platform. So different types of niche platforms evolving, even little niche super apps.
Right, so a very strong sense of being in the foothills. Oliver, a final thought for the brand out there thinking we cannot get left behind on this social commerce thing. Where to start?
I think that the key thing for brands is recognizing this is a growing channel. Recognizing that it's growing 3 times as fast as traditional e-commerce. So got to be a focus there. The second thing is that there is got to be this link with influencers and really making sure that you can engage with influencers and creators in an authentic way that provides value added to those influencers so that they can then be successful in engaging with their end consumers.
Yeah.
So a lot of focus on how do you engage successfully with that community to basically incent them and educate them to be as successful as possible.
Right, because to me, Laura, that bit sounds like gold dust. The building of that relationship, the building of trust. How have you seen that in practical terms play out? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about authenticity. And I think the biggest thing is it used to be about big influencers, the Kim Kardashians of the world, that had millions of followers. But in order to make it really successful and to really democratize commerce, you want to have smaller micro-influencers. You want to have more people participating in this social commerce thing so that people actually, because you're more likely to buy from your friends, your family, smaller influencers you have a closer connection with.
Yeah. Well, I think a key thing here is that we're driving an opportunity here for empowerment of individuals. Because if we think about our history as the UK, is that we have been on a trajectory up until the last few years of being dominated by bigger brands, bigger organizations and so on. Things like social commerce offer the ability to reverse that trend, to allow people, an individual, to make a very clear and in some cases highly profitable living on doing something that they care about with products they may be creating themselves with a stronger local affinity and so on. It offers in the UK a huge opportunity for the further democratization of where income's coming from.
Interesting. Well, I'm only sorry we've reached the end of this conversation, but for now, Oliver, Laura, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.